Jeez, my hair is a total mess today. Just in case anyone hasn't seen this series yet and does intend to see it, which, if you haven't seen it, you should. I'll tell you that right out the gate. Rest assured that these videos are by design as spoiler-free as I can possibly make them. I do plan to bring up one major spoiler in this video, but I will warn you before that shows up. I promise. Because of the nature of this series as a very mystery-oriented science fiction show, I'm going to have to be a little bit more sparse on the details than I even normally am, so keep that in mind as well. If you're just here for my literal 2 cents and nothing else, then I will tell you right out the gate, I absolutely love this series. I'm so glad that I've finally gotten the chance to watch it, and if you haven't seen it and you are at all interested in mystery or science fiction or horror or any of the above, and you haven't seen this show yet, you will like it. I promise you, you will. So if you don't want any more information than that, go ahead and close out of this video right now. I promise I don't mind, and go watch it. Both seasons are, of course, available on Netflix, as this is a Netflix original series. I remember when I first started hearing about this show, I was immediately sure that I was going to agree with the reviews. This is a show that I hadn't even heard was upcoming, and it seemed like that was true for a lot of the reviewers, so there wasn't really any hype around this. There was no potential for anyone to Phantom Menace this thing and review it higher than what it deserved, and there was no reason for anybody to fight back against the hype and review it lower than what it deserved. I was sure that the reviews were fair, and they were also universally positive. I knew I was going to end up liking it. I even considered watching the first season and reviewing it back when it first dropped. The issue was, everyone had already done it. I had better things to do, and I just kind of didn't feel like I should worry about it. So I put off watching it, and I put off watching it, and then finally the second season was announced. I'm like, well, I'll just wait until that comes out and I'll watch both of them. And now the second season is out, and I have watched both seasons. And as this My 2 Cents series is sort of a retrospective type of thing as much as it is reviews of current material, I figure I might as well talk about it as part of this series. I can't remember a single other series with such realistic characters. Characters who all behave in such realistic ways and have such realistic and relatable flaws to them. The closest that comes to mind is Buffy, but I'm under the impression that Buffy is a perfect show. Not literally, of course, because I do admit that it has faults as a show. But the point is, whenever I watch something good, I end up comparing it to Buffy, so that could just be my mind trying to compare this to Buffy. But it's honestly not a terrible comparison. This show is primarily about a group of normies helping out their superpowered friend to fight a monster, which, if you were to drop the episodic aspect of Buffy and make the entire season about a single story arc, and you wound the ages of the main characters down a little bit, that'd be pretty much the show. There's some conspiracy stuff in this, so it's also got echoes of the X-Files, which is really welcome. But it is also a horror show, or at least partially a horror show, which is set in the 80s, evoking imagery of some of the classic horror movies. The main plot of this series is that one of the core group of friends that are at the forefront of the show, a kid named Will Byers, is taken by some unseen force. That is the inciting incident that kicks off at least the first season of the show, though the second season does continue many of the themes. His friends, while looking for him, discover another kid who also seems to be lost, a girl who calls herself 11, or Elle. She seems to be on the run from someone. It could be the same unseen force that took Will. We don't know. And despite the fact that Elle has abilities that other humans don't seem to possess, she's still in a lot of danger, so these kids end up protecting her. And the first season is primarily about uncovering the mysteries of Elle's past, while unraveling the mystery of what happened to Will and trying to get him back. There is such a great and broad cast of characters in this show. The kid characters, the actors who play them, are absolutely fantastic. There's a couple of flaws in their work. They are still kids, they are still learning, but they are worlds beyond the typical child actor. And the dynamic between the primarily male members of this group are super realistic. You could imagine them being real kids that you know in your real life. They get together after school to play Dungeons and Dragons in one of their basements. I relate to these kids. I was these kids. Granted, my childhood was set a decade or so later than theirs, but the point still stands. Getting to see these kids and their friendship, it was just, you got pulled right into it. It made you feel like you were part of their group, and it was really super enjoyable. And as they get to know Elle, this mysterious outsider, you can understand why some of them don't like her at first, what problems they have with her, and why they end up coming to really like her and count her among their group. Elle is super mysterious and super dangerous, but she has this charm and naivete to her that makes her an appealing person. And getting to see her grow over the course of the first season and the second season too, she grows a lot over the second season too, is really a treat, because you get to see her basically at the beginning of her story. This is the first chance she's ever had to experiment with who she is as an individual, and you get to experience that with her. The adult characters are good. Everybody's parents are in the show. Everybody's parents have something going on with it that makes them interesting. But Will's mom in particular, Joyce Byers, played by Winona Ryder, is fabulous. Her interplay with the kids, her interplay with the other adults, It's just great. There's not a single character in the show who she doesn't have some great interactions with. Out of the characters she interacts with. She doesn't interact with everybody. Her interactions with the police chief, Jim Hopper in particular, are outstanding. Hopper is probably the best character in the show, at least in my opinion. He's such a flawed individual. He has his vices, he has his weaknesses, and yet he is this damned heroic, ultra-capable, badass character who stands up to injustice and protects those who can't protect themselves. He's an absolutely phenomenal character, and this show would be at a loss without it. Then you have the older sister of one of the kids' characters and all of her friends and all the people in her social group. You have such a large cast of characters, all with their own stories going on, stories which do eventually converge. This is television, but they do all have their own stories going on, at least for most of both seasons. And yet the story never feels like it gets bogged down by the size of the cast or the number of stories that are coexisting. The first season in particular had these really strong themes of parallels. As early as the first episode, they drop an Easter egg referencing X-Men number 134, I think it is, the beginning of the Dark Phoenix arc. Because the story of Jean Grey in the Dark Phoenix arc is a big parallel to the story that they're trying to tell in the first season. This being a horror show, there is a monster in it. They do have to fight a monster. And there's this great parallel between the monster and the character of Elle, so much so that there's an ongoing theory that Elle is somehow the monster, that the monster is sort of a dark reflection of her. The first season asks that question of us as early as I believe it was the first episode, and it's one that we don't really get a satisfactory answer to all the way up until the end of the season. Though some fans will tell you that that's not the case, and I disagree with them, and this is where we're getting to that one spoiler I mentioned before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom my face in really close. Those of you who don't want to hear the spoiler, cover your ears until my face is zoomed back out again. Okay? Okay. I do not think that Elle is the monster, because we do see Elle and the monster in the same place. Though, I do think that the monster was meant to be a parallel character to Elle, signifying that just like anyone else, Elle has the potential to become a monster. Okay, uncover your ears. I'm not going to be talking any more spoilers today. Let's move on. Mystery elements in this show are super strong. The imagery in it is great. There's a lot of great horror imagery, but it never really goes so overboard that it's unwatchable. It's got this vibe of being a hybridization of old classic horror movies with old classic science fiction and even comic book themes. There are pop culture references all throughout this, but they never feel out of place. They never feel forced. And one of my favorite things is when, let's say, the main characters, the main group of kid characters, start talking about something like Star Wars or Dungeons and Dragons with one of their parents. Their parents have very realistic responses where they try to talk to their kids about these things that their kids are interested in, but their lack of knowledge in it shows just like a real parents would. But you can tell that the kids appreciate the attempt of their parents to live a little bit in their world. And it's really cute and endearing, and that's one of the best things I can say about this show, is it's so cute and endearing. Even characters which are primarily antagonistic have some charm and redeeming qualities to them. For the most part, there are some that don't, but for the most part, even characters who in a more traditional, more trope-heavy, more conventional story would be the antagonists, end up having much more life to them and being much more realistic, which is another thing that, now that I think about it, compares it to Buffy. I'd also draw comparisons between this and something like Gravity Falls. It all takes place in a small town where this weirdness just happens to leak into our world. And you have this cast of primarily everyday people trying to deal with that problem. The cinematography in this is great. I mentioned the theme of parallels, especially in the first season. And I don't want to spoil the twist that I'm going to be referencing here, so this reference is going to be phrased more for people who've already seen the show. But when we get the reveal of where the monster came from, that in and of itself contributes so heavily to that theme of parallels. It's so well done. And the cinematography does a great job of lending to that as well. The direction is really good. The score and the soundtracks are amazing. You got some great 80s pop in there, which is fantastic, but the score itself is awesome. The theme of the show is this great retro 80s techno theme, and it plays in some variation at least once an episode as far as I can remember. It's enjoyable, but it's got this slightly otherworldly vibe that really contributes to the vibe of the overall show. But then there's a theme for the monster and for the place that the monster comes from. From what I can tell, they're using a string instrument and they're playing it specifically out of tune to create this fantastic dissonance that immediately makes any scene where it plays feel alien. This is a very fast-paced show. It's a very desperate show in a lot of places, but it never feels overwhelming in those regards either. The characters get a lot of really heroic moments that don't feel like they're tacked on. They feel like they grow organically from the story, that they are opportunities that present themselves organically through the story. The mystery is super great. The imagery is super great. The characters are super great, at least all throughout the first season. I wouldn't say that they're quite as strong in the second season. A lot of the mystery regarding who Elle is and where she came from feels like it's lost upon the second season, but that's not to say there isn't any mystery surrounding her character left at all. The second season, I just didn't feel like it was as strong. though I did get the sense that they were setting up potential plot lines for Season 3. The second season also introduces a new character who is kind of part of the main group of kid characters now. She never really gets fully absorbed into the group, at least she didn't seem to me, who by the end of the season didn't really feel like she got as much to do as I would have expected her to, but that's more because they never really moved her up from being a supporting character. I expect that to also be something that happens in Season 3. And overall, I did like her character, so I don't have a lot to complain about. There are so many more specifics that I could get into, and I want to, actually. I really want to. So if you'd like a more specific, more spoiler-filled version of this video, let me know. But as of right now, that's all I'm going to get into. Guys, this has been my 2 cents on this topic. As per usual, if you have seen Stranger Things, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, but try to keep it spoiler-free. Either way, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.